Hey guys, what's going on? We are back. Embrace the storm. Got my co-host Jeremy Weems. We did not plan it, but we are matching this evening.
We didn't plan it? Oh.
We didn't.
No.
Oh, was I not supposed to? No.
No.
We this evening are talking about anger, and my thought here was, I was listening to a podcast today while I was doing a couple of things, and I wanted to talk about, or ask you, I suppose, as an opener. What part do you think anger plays in our life in terms of motivation, pushing us forward? That mechanism. What does it? How does that strike you? How does the idea of anger strike you? You know, they were talking about anger leading to revenge, but anger leading to pushing you forward, and just they were exploring that idea. So I thought, you know what, let's explore that here, because I think it's an interesting topic, and so many of us, I think, were taught, you don't get angry, you don't
Right.
and then we wonder why some of us have trouble with that emotion.
Right. Well, let's face it. Anger, like fear, like doubt, like worry, like all these things, they can have multiple different effects. It just depends on where they are. If they're in front of you, they're going to stop you from actually getting somewhere. If all you see is red in front of you, chances are you're going to tear whatever's in front of you apart, right? You're going to make it worse than it actually is. Same with fear. If fear is in front of you, what are you going to do? It's going to stop you in your tracks. You're not going to be able to go and do what you need to do, right? So worry, if that's in front of you, you're going to be worried, oh, I can't do that because, like, if it's in front of you, it's holding you back and you're not going to reach your potential. If it's behind you, it's going to drive you, if you're smart with it, if you don't allow it to control you, you can drive you to a righteous anger, almost to where you need to be, right? Like, you can be disruptive in a sense of going to the next level with things.
But I think that you hear this idea of, oh, you're angry at them, good, use that to push you,
Right.
use that to fuel that fire inside of you. Do you not think that plays something here, or?
Well, it does, absolutely. Like, that's what I'm saying. Where you use it is if you put it behind you to motivate you, right? Like, not put it behind you to forget.
Gotcha.
You put it behind you to fuel you to go on, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, to like fear. If you use it to motivate you to go to the next level,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, I can't go back there because I'm here already. I can't go back.
Right.
Anger, like, oh, I'm going to do this. Like, they said I couldn't do it. I'm going to show them.
Yeah.
I will show them how I could do this. I'll show them that I'm better than what they said. I'll show them, and they're going to look back and say they were wrong for doubting me, right? And I'll prove it, right? Or whatever.
So, in describing that, I mean, you have a pretty good handle on it, it sounds like. So, has that played a part in your life where you've used anger to tear up your goals, to push you forward, to show them, if you will?
I think, I don't know if I'd say anger. I think it's, well, maybe it is. Maybe it's an element of it, of getting stuck in my own head more than anything, of like, okay, I can't be where I was. I can't stay where I'm at, because you know what, like, oh, if they're going to be doing this, I'm going to show them, right? Like, there is a totally an element of that. And you know what, I have a perfect example of, I don't know if it's exactly anger, but it was more of getting stuck in your own head with a perceived understanding of something where you're wrong, right? So this week at the gym, I went to go, and I was going to go do a strict press, which is lifting above your head,
Okay.
the weight, the barbell, right?
Yeah.
And I went and I had it on the rack, but as I'm getting ready to go, there are a bunch of guys all around, and young guys too, right? And one guy's on this machine, one guy's on the cables, one guy's here, and I'm dead center in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and kind of get intimidated, get in my own head about those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
And
Were they bigger jack dudes?
no, they weren't. They were
Okay.
younger guys, though, right?
Okay.
But remember a long time ago, I said that there's this group of guys that I felt like oh, they're laughing, they're
Yeah.
kind of mocking me.
Yeah.
It was those same guys,
Oh,
right?
gotcha.
So now it's just kind of like, oh, right, like
You were feeling
I
it.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
feeling kind of a little bit whatever, right?
Self-conscious.
Self-conscious. There's a good way of saying it. Yeah. So I was, and I literally just turned my music as loud as I could.
Yeah.
I just like drowned out everything, right?
Yeah.
And I just loaded up the bar the way I normally do.
Yeah.
Or not, or like I was pushing myself, so I'm going to load it up a little bit heavier.
Gotcha.
And I was kind of in that zone of, okay, forget it, right? And so I went to go lift, and and I put on quite a bit of weight. I think it was like 185 pounds, right?
Okay.
And so I went and I went up with it, right?
Yeah.
And I lifted it. I did my whole set, put it down, and then I got out of there, and I walked, and I just go walking back and forth in between, right? Just to clear my head and just like, okay,
Reset.
reset,
Yeah.
think it through, take about a 2-minute break, then I go back in and lift again, right? And so that was what I was doing, right? And I did my 3 sets and carried on, went on to my next thing, and I was in my own head, like, but while I was doing it on one of my sets, I looked because I was staring in the mirror, and I kind of caught a glance back at the guys, and there was a couple of them, and they're all kind of watching me, right?
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, and I used that to push me to, okay,
Finish your sets.
we're gonna finish it, and we're gonna
Yeah.
finish it clean, and I'm gonna make it look good, right? I'm not gonna
Yeah.
do these cheat sets. I'm gonna go as
Yeah.
make it look as good as possible, right? And I use that at that moment. It's like, oh my goodness, like, right? It annoyed me, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I was like, oh, they're gonna mock me. They're making fun, like all in my head, right?
Self-conscious anxiety.
Absolutely,
a little
right?
bit,
So
yeah.
I did and whatnot, right? So a little fast forward a little bit. I'm about 3/4 of the way through my workout. These guys all finished up. One of the younger guys comes up to me and he waves me down,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "There's pause for music." He's like, hey, we just want to say that we saw what you did there. We were all watching. Like, we were so amazed by how much you lifted there.
Yeah.
We thought you were gonna squat with it, but then you just lifted it like it was. We were blown away. Like,
And
we had to call my friends over to come look at this because just to show them. I was like, oh, thanks. Like, I just didn't know what to
all
say,
that
right?
in your head for nothing.
Nah, but it drove me to lift
Yeah.
it, right? Like, it
Yeah.
drove me. So I used it,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, they would have left the gym, and I would have never really thought about them again, and
Yeah.
that would have been fine. But the fact that he came and said that, I mean, like, that
Yeah.
that was encouraging to hear, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so that's good.
And
But
were you just like, were you on the Smith machine, or were you just off a couple of rests and away you go?
no, I was on the Smith machine. I was on. It was free, right? So
Yeah, that is impressive.
I went just straight up and just wanted to do it that way, right?
Yeah.
And just yeah, I don't know. It's what I've kind of come accustomed to. So it's like, so it's heavyweight, but in my head it's so easy to think something totally different, and I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of the problem that we deal with anger.
Yeah.
It has to typically is more of stuff that's in our own head, our own perceived notions, our own judgments of the situation. Right.
Not actually what's going on.
Yeah, and something I've learned is if I take a step back, and I'm still learning this, if I take a step back, often I can think, okay, I'm angry at this person because they did that. Why did they do that? Was it just that they were ignorant? They didn't know any better? Was it that they were actually malicious and they were actually doing that? In which case I was just to be angry? Or is it just that there's a learning opportunity in this that I need to just be better at? Or is this like a teaching moment where next time I'm not going to trust that person? Next time I'm going to deal with that person differently in this, right? And so even in those moments, I think we take a step back and be like, okay, we got to deal with this a little bit differently. So you can get angry, or you can take a step back and say, you know what, the hell with it. I don't care what they say anymore. I'm just going to carry on with my life.
But maybe I just want to be angry.
And there's definitely those moments too where
know?
you're just like, today I'm angry. Today I'm going to be
Like,
yeah.
and one of the thoughts I had when I was thinking through, because you were asking me, what are you talking about tonight, topic ideas, things.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, before I even texted you, I was kind of marinating on this topic a little bit. One of the things I thought about was this idea that if you're angry or fearful, I think they go hand in hand sometimes. The It's very easy to roll into a spot of desperation. You do things out of anger.
Yeah.
You do things out of fear that aren't necessarily for your benefit. They're not necessarily long-term moves.
Right.
They're short-term moves because you're moving out of that negative emotion, and you're not using that emotion for good. You're just acting out of that emotion.
Well, I think in all those things, like the great thing about emotion is that we get to choose how we react with it, right? Whether we're gonna, like I said, put it desperation, like if you're in sales, you're gonna make sales calls that you not normally make just so you can put food on the table, right? You're gonna out of desperation, you're gonna do those things.
Yes.
That's gonna motivate you.
Yes.
That's gonna drive you to get out of that place, right? You're gonna do whatever you can to get out of that place, and yet, or you could just feel desperate and lost and I'm giving up and I don't know what I'm doing, right? So you could do two different ways with that, right? Of how you're gonna react.
Yeah.
So all these things, emotions, the good thing about them is we have a choice of how we respond with them.
Yeah.
The bad thing about them is we get emotional sometimes and we react and we overreact and right? And I think
I historically have not done the best job to those closest to me.
Right.
With that deciding how I'm going to act.
Right.
Based on the emotion. It's super easy to be objective when it's a business relationship. Just talking for myself personally. But when it comes, like, I get angrier faster at my wife, for example, because she's closer to me.
Right.
That sounds ridiculous. But I guess because there's that level of comfort there, that's what happens. And so it's something that I have I'm trying to get better at, and I am getting better at, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, ask my wife the next time you see her. But it's something that I've become aware of. That self-awareness piece we've talked about so much before. But I think that teetering between anger and desperation, because anger can be used for good, like you said at the top of the podcast. I think desperation, again, you alluded to this, can be used for good as well, because you don't want to go back there, you don't want to stay here, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
But I think it could also go the other way, where you teeter into desperation, and then you make poor decisions.
Yes.
Rash decisions. You say and do things you probably shouldn't. Or even worse, and this is the category I typically fall into, is I let it freeze me in a place where I do nothing.
Right.
Right? Like you kind of, again, alluded to. But I think that moving forward is more important. And so sometimes acting out of desperation, anger, fear, being a little irrational, maybe not making the best decisions, I think in a lot of cases, it's better than doing nothing.
Right.
Because at least you're moving in a direction. And it might not be the right direction, but at least you're moving, because you can actually course correct when you're moving.
Yeah. It's always easier to turn a moving car than it is to stop one, right?
That's exactly right. You can't very easily lift a stone that's just sitting. When it's rolling, you can sure roll it the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear what you say. I get that. That makes, when you're in a place, to blow up, to react is like, okay, you know what? Okay, now you got to deal with it. You can deal with it, but then you can course correct and you can keep moving, right? I think part of something I'm more of the opposite. I've kind of distanced myself from a lot of emotions, and maybe sometimes a little bit too much, where it's like I have a hard time getting emotionally involved in certain things.
Yeah.
Like I'm there with my clients when they're buying a house. I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm like, and I'm going with them.
Yeah.
Through the ups, through the downs, and that's always exciting and such. But I walk away and I'm with them. When I'm with them, I'm with them. I'm involved. I'm there.
Yeah.
But when I walk away, I'm not. right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, hey, I will work hard to make sure that they have the best experience possible.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave, and with these, I'll make sure it's gonna be different. So
Yep.
you kind of have to turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. And sometimes when I come back home and I'm like, it's off.
Yeah.
And I'm just I've done enough, and now I'm
Because you
here.
left it all in the field somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then here I have times where I'm like, I just don't have time for. I don't have reactions the way I should. Maybe.
Yeah, because you've spent that energy, you've depleted that energy
Yeah.
elsewhere, and I think that's one of the reasons I think why we can be, the worst is not the right word, but the shortest with those around us,
Yeah.
because it's our safe space, and we take it for granted. We take the people for granted.
Yeah.
That they know us and they know our intentions, but somehow that means that they get our leftovers sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not right, but that's I think what happens.
Yeah.
You're talking about coming home and being distant, whatever, and I think that that's why on the flip side, I'll come home and I'll be a little bit short and a little bit low energy with my family. But talking about course correcting, that's when I've really started noticing that. Hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have lost my temper.
Right.
Like basically, let's start from here, kind of thing. And I think that, again, going back to the anger piece, I think that's the kind of anger, that sort of snap, that's not needed. It's not necessary.
Right.
It's not helpful. Because that's not a slight.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about anger being fuel for something. That's when people slight you, when a teacher tells you wouldn't amount to anything and you become a multimillionaire or whatever, right? Like a Jay-Z, for example.
Right.
Those sorts of things. So I just think that anger to me is such an interesting emotion because there's so many sides to it.
Right.
There's so many uses to it. And you could say the same thing about all the emotions. But as I was thinking through this, I think anger for me has always been that one that can quickly jump to so many different areas. It's the easiest emotion.
Right. I think for myself, in my past, in my years ago, like that was something that was probably most prevalent. Like I'd react quickly on anger. I'd jump into that. That would be right. And I think I didn't like who I was then. Like now I don't like who I was then, should I say, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going back to that. So I do, not that I don't feel angry. It's just, it looks differently than it did then, right? Like I used to be more reactionary, more emotional in that. And I didn't like that because I wasn't in control. I'd lose control over this, and that wasn't a good feeling.
My brain just went there. I knew it was going to come back to control.
Yeah.
And I think that that was really good. I think I was talking to a friend of mine about control today. Shout out to my friend Justin.
Okay.
But I think the interesting thing about that is if we can control the anger, if we can control the fear, control the anxiety, and almost manipulate it
Right.
towards whatever our end is, right? Whether it's finishing those lifts in the gym, whether it's picking up the phone and making some more sales calls,
Right.
or whether it's simply accomplishing a goal because someone told you couldn't. Jerry, you can't be a real estate agent. You'll never make it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that kind of thing. I think if we can channel that and control it, that's where anger becomes a helpful tool.
Right.
Something to be yielded, if you will.
Right. Right. So it's like that old thing, it acts to be a weapon or a tool, right? Like it depends on what you do with it, right? Like so
depends what you do with it. That is very true. I think too, you're talking about being slow to respond on some of that stuff or being a little bit detached. I think that that's good because you can get super fired up about a situation at the office or at home. And if you just take even 30 seconds to breathe on it, you realize that, like, your anger might be justified. Let's
Right.
start there. Might be justified, but blowing up is not the move
Most of the time.
most of the time.
Well, you think Jesus went and he destroyed
Oh,
the, like,
I'm
like, you
I'm
have
not
that.
saying that it's not the move sometimes. I'm not saying it's not the move sometimes,
Yeah.
but I think strategic
Yeah.
blow up, strategic moves here, right?
Being smart, yeah.
Like a friend of mine who will remain nameless, I've learned a lot from him, and I think it's knowing when to use that anger accordingly,
Right,
when to use that frustration accordingly, right?
right.
Yeah, knowing. It's been interesting knowing when someone is upset and then watching how they react in certain situations. That has been super interesting to learn from and to play the long game.
Yeah. Well, I think even for myself, I've been in situations where I did not like the answer I was given.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the option, and it choked me because I felt it was unjust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had the option of either reacting
Yeah.
or sucking it up. If I react short term, and chances are it would end up costing me because I wouldn't get respect, I wouldn't get that. But I sucked it up,
Yeah.
played the long game, played like, okay, you know what?
So you took
I
that
don't,
moment. You took that moment.
right. I don't feel it's just, but I'll take the punishment, or not punishment, but like figurative punishment in my head, right? And I'll take it, and it's humbling. And you know what? Take those moments and I never brought it up again, right? And like that, because it's easy to go, well, I'm going to talk to you now. Well, I'm going to come tell you about this problem, whatever else. I'm going to go tell that person. I'm going to go tell that.
Yeah.
But instead, I just kept it to myself, and just like, okay, you know what? I have a safe place if I want to vent to, right, where I can do that. So
Yeah.
I will go do that. Somebody who's not involved doesn't care either way, right?
Just move on.
Yeah, just right. And then I just need to blow this off, and then we're just get out of my head, and then we're good, right? So go do that, and then also, okay, we're good. And also a few months later, somebody comes, the way you handled that situation back then, like we were kind of wondering what you were going to do with it. It's like we were kind of surprised at how you dealt with it. At that point, I kind of like
they were hoping you would flip out, or
no,
they
they
thought
were
you might, or
they thought I might, but they were hoping I wouldn't, right? And a part of having that character of how you're going to react, that's a matter of what you're going to do with it, right? It comes down to what kind of character, what are you going to be, right? And
yeah.
and and learning kind of how to react in some of those situations where, as upsetting as they can be, sometimes bite your tongue. And in the grand scheme of things, 2 weeks later, that didn't matter. In the moment, it did.
Yeah.
But
what
that's
is
it.
what is that? If it doesn't, if it's not going to matter in 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years, then why worry about it?
Yeah.
I think is the saying, and I think that's super right. And one thought that struck me while you were talking was, if you blew up in that scenario, don't know what it was, doesn't matter. If you blew up in that scenario, there was consequences, probably.
Yeah.
Now we know that there would have been.
Right.
But if you didn't blow up, which is what you did, you chose to just let it lie and walk away, kind
Yeah.
of thing. It played out differently. I don't think there's. I don't want to say ever, but there's very rarely a scenario where letting it lie and moving on, even if it's briefly, has ever hurt.
Right.
Now, are there some situations? Sure. I'm sure there is.
Absolutely. But
Far more often, if you fly off the handle first, immediately, there's going to be far more consequences for those actions than letting it lie, thinking it through, then responding, or then moving on, as the case might be. And if you have to then respond later, so be it.
yeah.
But I don't think that very rarely is there ever lasting consequences for letting it lie for a little bit so you can think it through.
Right. No, I think there's value in that. Is don't always see the forest from the trees, right? You don't see what's actually happening.
Yep.
You don't know what's always behind the scenes.
Yep.
That doesn't mean things are unjust or are just either way.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it doesn't suck, but
Yes.
you learn to do the hard things, right? You learn to do those hard things, and then it doesn't matter as much, and you just
And it doesn't mean you don't respond.
no, absolutely,
And when we say respond, it doesn't necessarily mean conversation. There could be different things.
yeah,
But it doesn't mean you don't respond. And it doesn't mean you don't respond quickly.
right,
What it does mean is you take a minute to breathe on it, whatever it is, to think it through. You know?
yeah,
If I do this, then this. That, at least that's the way my brain works.
yeah,
It's sort of like that chess move situation where, if I move this guy here, what happens?
yeah,
Okay, cool. If I move over, that sort of thing.
yeah,
I kind of work through that in those moments, or at least I try to.
yeah,
Doesn't always work out, obviously, because I'm human, but that's kind of the way my brain operates. On
yeah,
just I wrote down character and control.
yeah,
Because I think that those two things together speak volumes of who you are and how you react to things.
yeah. Well, even there, like when you realize how people are wired, sometimes that also helps, right? Like certain people, they're going to be going after that money, and that's going to be the only thing that matters is that money. They have to have it, right? And so, okay, so you're going to give up $1,000 here, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
To get knowing that if I do this down the road, it will lead to more. Okay, well, I'll pay it. I'll give it up now. They're going to feel like they have a victory, but they're also going to see that I wasn't just fighting for, like, because if I would have, if you get in a situation like that, you could fight for that extra money, and you get, okay, well, I got a little bit of reward now, and you feel good, and you feel satisfied, but you don't look down the road where, like, well, that would have, they're not going to talk to me anymore. They're not going to do that anymore because down here it's going to be cost me.
And I think sometimes one of these here notebooks can help.
Yeah.
Because I think that when it comes to serious situations in life, writing that down, thinking about the long term, what it looks like down the road,
Yeah.
kind of scribbling that out can help.
Yeah.
Again, a friend of mine, he's really great at that. Kind of Nostradamus a little bit in some of it, able to predict, but he's very good at sort of thinking through what happens if scenarios and getting it right. But I think you said it earlier, it's just experience. Like when you have so many reps, talking about gym stuff,
Right.
when you do so many reps of the same exercise, you have that muscle memory.
Yeah.
Well, it's no different than dealing with people and situations. When you have so many reps under your belt, you just kind of know, because everybody's the same.
Yes.
Nobody's different. It's like in sales when they teach you all the objections and stuff. Nobody's objections are unique. There's like 10 objections in the whole world, and then they're just dressed up differently depending on what you do.
Different lipstick on the same pig.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with people.
Yep.
Right? All people are the same. Just there are 6 or 8 or 10 different personalities, and once you kind of learn them, you just get to know.
Yeah.
And so I think there's actually like 12 personalities or something like that in the entire world.
Okay.
I think is what it is.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah.
No, and I think if we just more often than not, if we worry less about the other people and just focus on ourselves, it changes everything. Like, oh, they made a comment. Oh, that comment came out rude, and it was rude, and they meant it like that, and that was right. Or they just said something dumb and they weren't thinking about it, and or they did and they're having a bad day, or maybe they have an issue and they're kind of, that's how they're dealing
It usually
with it.
says more about them than it does about you.
So what are you gonna do? You're gonna think about it. You're gonna let it bother you. You're gonna go
Yes,
think
I am.
about it later at
Yes, I
night,
am.
and you're gonna take it home, and you're gonna, right? What a waste.
Yes, I am.
So you're letting them live rent free in your head for how long? Or you could just be like, I don't care. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to carry on with my life and worry on to the next, right? And I find maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's experience, maybe it's whatever, but in the last couple of years, I've cared a lot less about people's reaction to things.
Yeah.
And they could blow up, they could do their thing, and I'll just be like, I don't care.
What do you think? What do you think that's done for you in this last 8, 10 months?
Well, I think that's just it. I don't let them live rent free in my head. Like it's like, okay, they're done. Like they blew up on me. They had this, or they had, or they said this about me, or they said
Yeah.
this to me, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
you know what? There's certain things that it'll bother me a little bit more, but for the most part, it's like I just don't care. I'm not going to worry about
Yeah.
that. I that won't affect me and my goals.
Yes.
So what's more important? Me thinking about what they think about and worrying about that,
Yeah.
or my goals, my dreams, my ambitions, and how this affects that, right? Like,
My friend always says it this way. He's got a good line, and it's something to the effect of, "Why would you let someone else own your head?"
yeah,
You know, and I think for me, I still struggle with people pleasing and what people think of me. Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but a whole lot less. And I think what helped me was this realization that this I'm struggling here because I want to make sure I articulate this well. This idea that I'm being judged no matter what. If I walk funny, I'm being judged. If I walk straight, I'm being judged. If I say it like this, I'm being judged. If I say it like that, I'm being judged. No matter what, somebody's judging me for something. And so why would I worry about it? Because no matter what I do, someone's going to be upset about it.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And so that knowledge has freed me up quite a bit. And then this idea that another friend of mine has told me of stop being so nice. You know, like
that's my biggest
stop,
problem too.
basically stop being a doormat and letting people walk all over you and take advantage of you, that kind of thing. But those two ideas collectively over the last couple of years, I've gotten better. Not to say I don't have insecurities and still deal with
Right.
stuff, right? I mean, it's some days it's a daily mental battle.
Absolutely.
But I think that knowing, at least for me, knowing that I'm going to be judged no matter what I do or say, has been somewhat free.
Yeah. And I guess I come from the opposite. Like, who cares? Let them do what they're gonna do. Like, you're gonna
But I did care.
Yeah.
That was my problem because I
Right.
did care.
right. And a lot of people do. And oh well, I say for the most part I don't. But like, look at the example I gave. I cared about what those kids were thinking. Right.
Kids being the operative word here, I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Right. And I say kids. They were probably either high school or right around like grade 12, 20, somewhere in there. But they're young guys,
Yeah.
right? And you know what? Well, maybe they're younger than that too. But like in my head, it was like
Yeah.
they just whatever. It
The
got
gym does weird things to people, I think, on both sides of the fence. Because I've had it too, where I walked in one morning, it was like, I don't know, 4:15 or something like that, and this group of kids, probably young, early 20s,
yeah,
were finishing up, obviously come off night shift or something. At least that's the situation, the way it went. They're coming off night shift, went to the gym before going home, kind of thing.
yeah,
And I immediately was like, well, they're gonna judge me because I'm here. You know?
yeah,
I don't know why I thought that. Don't know.
yep,
Has no bearing. I'm older than they are. I've got things in life going on that they probably don't.
yeah,
Like, why am I letting this bother me?
yeah,
You know? Kind of like your guys at the gym.
yeah,
I think the gym is such a good, not metaphor, but good sort of analogy of life on what the brain does and what just staying in your own lane can do for you.
yeah,
You know, turning the music up and just going back to work.
yeah. It's who cares what somebody else is doing, right? You never notice that more than when your headphones die. It's yeah,
I luckily have not had that happen to me, but
it happens once, and you're like, this really sucks.
yeah,
And not only are you listening to yourself breathe like whatever, you're listening to everybody else breathe like that too, and you're like,
yeah,
well, that's what happens, all right.
yeah.
And
Well,
you listen, everybody's doing the same thing, and nobody has a clue that the other person's doing it, and they're
so many people I know like, and they've posted about it, and you've probably seen posts about it. But so many people I personally know have like gotten to the gym, either A, forgot their headphones, or their headphones died, and they're just sitting in their car going, maybe I just got home today.
I have gone to the gym, forgot my headphones, came back, picked them up, and went back because I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this without them. That's just
No,
not happening.
I did that one day where my like I use kind of big headphones. Sorry, I used kind of big headphones like these guys over the years, but I don't know if they died or I forgot them or something. But all of a sudden I was like, oh dang, what am I gonna do? I luckily had my earbuds in my pocket. I don't know why, because I
Yeah.
never do in the mornings. But I had my earbuds with me, and so I was like, oh thank goodness, because I too probably would have just been like, all right, that's good for today. See y'all tomorrow.
I don't know if your gym has music or whatnot playing.
It does, and it's
Yeah.
not great.
Ours doesn't. So it's like dead
Dead
silent.
silent?
Yeah, so you're
Oh,
or if you're there by yourself, it's like it's
we-
just yeah.
eerie.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, our gym luckily does have music.
Oh.
So it's not like terrible. The music's not great.
Yeah.
But at least it's loud enough you can kind of mask how heavy you're breathing when,
Yeah.
when you're doing things. But it's certainly weird without headphones
Yeah.
for sure. Like even in between songs I'm like, yeah, get to the next one. But I want to come back to this idea of anger. And I don't know why I've been fascinated by it the last couple of days, but just if we can control it and we can use it to our advantage, to our good,
Yeah.
it can build our character. And the way we treat anger also shows our character, and that's something you were talking about earlier, is character building through this anger, this fear, this anxiety, whatever you got going on, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of all part and parcel to that. Is letting it either you let it shape you or you shape it,
Yeah.
and that determines your character.
Yeah.
And your character is what the world sees.
Yeah.
You know, and so we want to bring value to the world. We want to bring value to you guys listening. I think that's the question for this evening. I don't know how long we've been going. A little bit shorter today.
Yeah.
Kind of thing we'll wrap it here on this idea, and I'll let you have the last word here. But I think the thought here is, are you letting anger shape you, or are you shaping the anger and using it as it comes out?
Yeah. Where is it? Is it in front of you, holding you back from?
I really like that analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's holding you back and it's disrupting you from reaching your goals, from reaching your dreams, from getting ahead to where you want to get to,
Yeah.
that's a problem. Then it's not a good anger.
Yeah.
If it's behind you and pushing you to prove yourself, to show yourself,
Yeah.
to motivate you to be better,
Yeah.
then use it, right?
Yeah.
Now, the other side of it is if it's against somebody else, maybe you have to really do a check and be like, is it worth being angry about?
Yeah. Is it something you need to let go and forgive, whether they know it or not?
Yeah, well, maybe it's just let go of. If there's maybe it's not even anything worth forgiving, right? Maybe it's just something that's just misunderstanding, and you're like, well, that was dumb.
You're holding on to it, kind of.
Yeah, holding on to something that's just not there, living rent free in your head all the day, that doesn't benefit you in any way, shape, or form, right?
I personally have watched that idea destroy people.
Absolutely.
They hold on to these ideas in their head. They let it build and build and build, and then they blow their top over mostly perceived things. But it's a snowball effect where it just kind of keeps building and building and building before it's got to come out somehow, and it's not good. It's not constructive.
Yeah. And that used to be how I used to be, is I'd let things fester and build and go, and then also a big blow up, and just like and it just wasn't healthy. It wasn't good.
Can ruin lives.
100%. It definitely was not a good place, right? And so, what are you doing with it? Or if you can use it to motivate you to be better, do it. That's the ultimate dream, right? If you can do that.
Find people to talk to. and not gossip, but actually constructive conversation. You've seen a counselor for that reason.
Yeah.
I've sought out good men in my life that, like you alluded to, have zero attachment to what I have to talk about.
I do have one funny story quickly.
Give it. Let's finish on a funny story. I like it.
So years ago, I said I dealt with anger, right?
Yeah.
I had to go to anger management.
Oh.
Yeah, it was probably one of the funniest things I've ever done in my life. I sat there and everybody's talking, and this one particular guy, he was talking about how he went and he caught his, I guess, girlfriend or whatever cheating.
Yeah.
And he just beat the guy to a pulp. Like that's why he was here, and whatnot, and all this stuff. And he's telling this story.
Yeah.
And there's a group of like, I guess 10, 12 people, men, women combined, right?
Yeah.
And I sat there, and the instructor was like, well, okay, so do you think you could have dealt with that differently? Everybody there was like, no, I think he handled that well. Like, they had it coming, and just like, right, and just, but that's the mindset, is like, oh no, we had this, right, and then the next person told their story, is like, I don't see what's wrong. Like, he shouldn't have done that. That ball shouldn't have been in your yard. You had every right to go put a hole in it or whatever, right? Like,
just justifying the anger.
And everybody's justifying their anger, and I sat there, I laughed through the whole thing, because that's all I heard about. Then it made me think of what, like, my anger and my something. I'm like, man, some of the things I'm doing is so stupid. Like, I'm laughing at them, but and maybe not on the same level, but like, I'm doing stupid things.
So you didn't get out of anger management what you were supposed to. However, it did help you.
It made me realize how stupid some of the things I'm getting angry about were, right? So,
I love that.
So it's really funny and very humbling story. I mean, that was a number of years back. Just so it's one of those things where young and dumb.
Like you're one of those guys. I've met quite a few where, like, you can be intimidating because you're a big dude, right? You get to know you. You're just a big soft teddy bear.
Yeah.
Actually, he's mean. You don't want to talk. No, I'm just kidding. but I wouldn't want you angry. Like, I wouldn't want to cross you in that way, because you are a big dude.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, even there, we had a situation, just in the dealing with something in town, whatever, and at the library, whatever. And I was talking with this one person, and they kind of crossed the line, and with our staff and stuff. And I was kind of they were new, and like, how do we deal with this? So I was like, I'll deal with that, right? Yeah. And I dealt with it right there on the phone, and also, and
like, having a hard conversation.
Yeah, well, it just be like, look, you're not doing this anymore. This doesn't work. And I just was, and they kind of fired back, and I was like, no, stop. This is right. And we dealt with it, right. And I was very direct. I was still being polite, because I'm still on council, so I have to be professional about it. And so I was making sure I was.
Which we know, getting angry and unprofessional doesn't help situations either.
Absolutely, right? So, but I was not happy with the situation either, right? So I was very, like, firm but direct, right? Yeah. And everything was also whatever, and I didn't think anything of it, right? Yeah. And also, the next meeting, we had our board meeting, and the librarian, we're at the board meeting, and she's like, yeah, the way he dealt with that, I was like, I do not want to be there when he gets mad. I've never seen him just turn on somebody like that. Was like.
And were you that mad?
I wasn't even that mad, and so I was just like, she's like, but he was like.
Well, because I think everybody that knows you, like, you're a happy guy, you're upbeat, you're positive all the time. So for you to kind of flip that switch and go, no, listen, you know,
right.
like to have that serious streak in you, I think she said that and acted that way because it was uncharacteristic of you.
Right.
But it was what was needed for the situation.
Right. And that's the other side of it is when I was dealing with this anger, when I was going through this change.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I don't know when it all changed so far, right? Because I used to be, like I said, very reactionary, and I say this in a sense that, you know what, there's a lot in the story that if you're dealing with anger issues, if you're dealing with getting mad and frustrated and angry all the time, it can change. You can work through that so you don't feel that.
Yeah.
right? There's a way out of that, so you're not trapped in that anger. And if you're like, how do I get out of this anger? How do I get out of this? There's different methods you can work to get out of it.
Two things that I find help: talk to somebody,
Yeah,
not attached to whatever the situation is, because that doesn't help.
yeah,
So detached person and a heavy bag help tremendously.
yeah. Well, it really be ready for it, like, because you need to learn to separate yourself from a situation and let go of it, which is the hardest part of
Yeah.
is letting go of the anger, because you hold on to it and it'll hurt you every time. Put it behind you and it'll motivate you. It'll
Yeah.
drive you, right? So
take control, build your character. Don't let it control you.
absolutely.
We love you guys. See you next time.